Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 5, Chapter 5, Text 2. Translation. One can attain the path of liberation from material bondage only by rendering service to highly advanced spiritual personalities. These personalities are impersonalists and devotees. Whether one wants to merge into the Lord's existence or wants to associate with the personality of Godhead, one should render service to the Mahatmas. For those who are not interested in such activities, who associate with people fond of women and sex, the path to hell is wide open. The Mahatmas are equipoised. They do not see any difference between one living entity and another. They are very peaceful and are fully engaged in devotional service. They are devoid of anger, and they work for the benefit of everyone. They do not behave in any abominable way. Such people are known as Mahatmas. Purport. The human body is like a junction. One may either take the path of liberation or the path leading to a hellish condition. How one can take these paths is described herein. On the path of liberation, one associates with Mahatmas, and on the path of bondage, one associates with those attached to sense gratification and women. There are two types of Mahatmas, the impersonalist and the devotee. Although their ultimate goal is different, the process of emancipation is almost the same. Both want eternal happiness. One seeks happiness in the impersonal Brahman, and the other seeks happiness in the association of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. As described in the first verse, Brahma Sokyam. Brahman means spiritual or eternal. Both the impersonalist and the devotee seek eternal blissful life. In any case, it is advised that one become perfect. In the words of Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya Lila 22:87, Asat Sangatyag e Vaishnavachar, Stri Sangi Ekasadu Krishna Bhakta Ar. To remain unattached to the modes of material nature, one should avoid associating with those who are asat, materialistic. There are two kinds of materialists. One is attached to women and sense gratification, and the other is simply a non-devotee. On the positive side is association with Mahatmas, and on the negative side is the avoidance of non-devotees and women hunters. Amagyanatimirindasya Gyananjana Shalakya Chakshur Unmilitamina Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Vande Shri Guru Shri Yata Barakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavams Cha Shri Rupam Sagrachatam Sagna Ragnatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvitam Savadutam Parajina Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Badan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishagan Vitam Cha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandha Jagat Pate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gurange Radha Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sate Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpatarubhasa Kripa Sindhu Bhyavachapadi Nampavanivo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Mam Vishnubhadaya Krishna Abstag Bhutale Srimate Kridananda Goswamini Tanamani Mam Vishnubhadaya Krishna Abstag Bhutale Srimate Shivaram Swamini Tanamani Mam Vishnubhadaya Krishna Abstag Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swamini Tanamani Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharne Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pashkachadishtarne Makam Karoti Vachalam Pangam Langai Tegrim Yad Kripatam Aham Vande Shri Gurun Dinatarnam. Mahatsevam Dvaram Ahur Vimuktes Tamo Dvaram Yoshitam Sangi Sangam Mahantaste Samachita Prashanta Vimanyavasuridas Sadavoye. One can attain the path of liberation from material bondage only by rendering service to highly advanced spiritual personalities. These personalities are impersonalists and devotees. Whether one wants to merge into the Lord's existence or wants to associate with the personality of Godhead, one should render service to the Mahatmas. For those who are not interested in such activities, who associate with people fond of women and sex, the path to hell is wide open. The Mahatmas are equipoised. They do not see any difference between one living entity and another. They are very peaceful and are fully engaged in devotional service. They are devoid of anger and they work for the benefit of everyone. They do not behave in any abominable way. Such people are known as Mahatmas. What I find interesting about this verse, my main fascination with it, is in the transliteration, where Prabhupada translates this word vimanyavaha as meaning without anger, and then in brackets, one must distribute Krishna consciousness to persons who are hostile without becoming angry at them. And since this class is meant to be orientated around book distribution and the upcoming marathon, I see this as being a really essential ingredient of any book distributor's makeup, that they're able to distribute Krishna consciousness even to persons who are hostile without becoming angry at them. It's actually the principle of causeless mercy, that we're giving to a person who is not going to reciprocate, and yet we still find somehow or another a way of touching them with Krishna's grace, even though they're not interested, even though they may be hostile. So there's a great art in how this is done. This principle of causeless mercy. The word mercy itself, if we look at it strictly in terms of its definition, it means that it's something that's being given without thought of return, or without thought of a just exchange going on. Because when we're giving in proportion to what we're receiving, we're not being merciful to the person, we're simply having a transaction. And there is what's prevailing is a sense of justice. They haven't cheated me and I haven't cheated them. It's equal. They've given me what I've given them, and it's an equal exchange. Justice has been performed. But when you give more than what they give to you, you give more than what you're receiving, then you're being merciful. That's what being merciful means. And sometimes mercy is given because there's a cause, and sometimes it's given because there isn't a cause. So in distributing Krishna consciousness, we have to be in the mood that I'm going to give this even if there is no reciprocation. And one of the reasons we can do that is because what we're giving, we have an unlimited supply of it. It's only when we're in material consciousness that we think that, I need to replenish my stocks. I can only give to the extent that I have my own stocks available to me. But our stock, what we're actually distributing, is love of Krishna, and there's an unlimited supply of that. Of course, there is logistics. For instance, the books cost a certain amount, and so if we just give them away for nothing, then eventually, theoretically, we may not be able to buy more books to give out. So there's a certain logistics involved, but each situation is to be dealt with individually. This concept of causeless mercy, I was meditating on it a couple of mornings ago, and I was thinking, Krishna's causelessly merciful. I took it back to the point where we left the spiritual world, and I was thinking, why did we leave the spiritual world? What was the cause of us leaving the spiritual world? What was the reason? And my conclusion was that, the truth is always simultaneously one and different. There must have been a reason, there must have been a cause why we left the spiritual world. But in the sense of simultaneously one and different, there is a reason and there isn't a reason. There must have been a reason, but there cannot have been a good reason. So in a sense, the reason we left the spiritual world, there was no good reason. There was no cause that we could sort of point to and say that this is a coherent, rational, justifiable reason why I left the spiritual world. There isn't such a thing. So we left the spiritual world in a sense, it's causelessly, it's kind of causeless stupidity. So there's no cause that you can point to that is logical, that is coherent, that is intelligent, why we left the spiritual world. So to get back to the spiritual world, we have to use this principle of causelessness to give this love of Krishna to the conditioned souls, just as it happened to us. I think most devotees experience when they're being introduced to Krishna consciousness. This is the case. This was my case. That I was trying to perceive what the motive was of this individual who was trying to explain to me about Krishna, and who was sharing this knowledge with me. I was thinking, what's this person's motive? There was one devotee in Australia, his name was Gopinath Acharya, and he got to know me, and he was just always being merciful to me. And he would visit my house and he would bring some prasadam, and one time he said to me, he would give me books and he would not charge me. And one time he took me to this part of this little storeroom of the Sydney Temple, and he said, I've got a gift for you today. And there was this huge glass bottle about this tall, and it was filled with oil. And he put his hand inside the bottle and he pulled out these beads that were being soaked in mustard oil, and they were huge tulsi beads, just magnificent tulsi beads. And actually the main head tulsi bead wasn't much smaller than this head on this microphone, and they were all sort of beautifully sequenced, going from large to small. And he gave them to me, just gave them to me and said, you can start your chanting now on beads. And so I came to the conclusion that actually this person is not trying to make me become indebted to him, or he's not trying to bring me under his, it's not like he's trying to get some leverage or control over me. He's just being very kind and very affectionate. And and so that is the principle of how Krishna consciousness is spread. If there's a reason, then it's not love, and it's not compelling, and we'll try and look for a better deal somewhere else. Because if that's how, we've come to Krishna consciousness because we're getting a good deal, but the material world is endlessly mutable. There's better deals going around. But if you've come to Krishna consciousness because you've sensed that herein lies this most, in the material world, most elusive quality of love, if we find that it exists in this society or in this philosophy, then that is what lands a person, what lands the jiva, or what turns the jiva around. The reason this leaving the spiritual world, it's an interesting thing that, we're in the spiritual world, we're with Krishna. And we can visit Krishna, we can play tricks on Krishna, we can think about him because he's just in the area, he's in the environment. We have access to his association, his direct personal association. Everyone has access to that direct personal association of Krishna. So we leave the spiritual world It means we're leaving Krishna. And when we leave the spiritual world, we become ignorant of Krishna. It means we're ignoring Krishna. We're entering into a state of ignorance. We're becoming conscious of the material energy, and we're becoming unconscious of Krishna. That's in effect what we're doing. So, what's Krishna's position on it? What's his attitude when we leave the spiritual world? It's not that he's saying, well, you're rejecting me, then I wash my hands of you. Good riddance. Who needs you anyway? We're all happy up here without you. You don't make any difference. It's not his attitude. But one time, I remember a long time ago, I was being preached to by a Christian, and he was explaining to me how Jesus is so merciful. And he said that when Jesus has a flock of, Jesus is like a shepherd, and he has a flock of sheep, and if one of the sheep strays away, he loves his sheep so much that if one sheep strays away, he'll leave all the others and go and get that one. So he doesn't want to lose a single sheep. And I remember thinking, that's really dumb. That is so dumb, because he goes and gets that sheep, and then he comes back and he notices 3 others have gone off somewhere because there's no one supervising them. So he puts the one that he got back, and then he goes to get the other 3, and they've gone in different directions. And by the time he gathers those 3 and brings them back, they've all disappeared. So in this sense, when we leave the spiritual world, Krishna being transcendental is, again, achincha beta beta tattva. He doesn't just abandon us. Okay, 1 sheep left, I've got plenty of sheep, still with me. 1 sheep gone, I've got the rest still here. He's not like that. He doesn't abandon us. He doesn't not care about us. But neither does he abandon the spiritual world. He remains in the spiritual world, fully present there, and he enters into our hearts as the super soul and accompanies us into the material world to tell us, you've made a mistake, turn around, go back. So he's in our hearts telling us to, you're making a big mistake. But, for whatever reason, we've thought, let's give it a try being the enjoyer and being the controller ourselves. So, there's this jiva saying, saying to the intelligence, you have to figure out how to enjoy and how to control now. We're going into the material world. It's your business now to figure out how we're going to enjoy ourselves and control our environment. But the intelligence is saying, this is impossible. It's not possible. But again, the ego that's now become the false ego saying, I don't care how you do it, just do it. So the intelligence says to the mind, okay, you've got to start accepting and rejecting things now in order, our upstairs wants us to become a controller and an enjoyer. So you have to now start accepting and rejecting, on the basis of how to enjoy and how to control. And so the mind begins this project, and the mind starts to tell the senses, okay, now accept this, and you reject this. Now, when we know that, the material ways of enjoying sense gratification, we know from the Bhagavad Gita that it says that yad tad agre mritopamam pariname vishameva. It says, what's the first line? Vishayendriya samyogad. Vishayendriya samyogad. It comes from bringing the sense objects in touch with the senses. And it begins like nectar and it ends like poison. So bringing the senses in touch with the sense object. This is the sort of start of the whole karmic entanglement. The coverings of the living entity. This is how it all begins. And often when the senses are brought in touch with the sense objects, it's not always actually that it begins like nectar and it ends like poison. It has to be understood. It's a little more complex than that, because often, like when somebody starts smoking cigarettes, it's not like nectar at the beginning. Generally, you don't have somebody smoking 2 packs a day just right off the top. They've got to acquire the taste. Similarly with drinking alcohol, your first shot of alcohol is just like, wow, and you have to kind of be very determined. You have to be very, very determined to overcome that repulsion. Because the instincts, when you're going, it's like when you're going from purity to contamination. It's like a whole conditioning process. So then this is how the entanglement happens. That the jiva starts to become covered. So that's what the Sankirtan devotee is dealing with. People who have all these coverings. And the original misconception of that this material world is for my enjoyment, that original misconception is at the foundation of this conditioned soul's consciousness, of their worldview. So that has to be dismantled before someone can start to really seriously consider spiritual life. And that's the expertise of the Sankirtan devotee. If someone is really covered over, if there's layer after layer of misconception and of material conditioning, then it's very hard to actually have a coherent exchange with a person and have them accept the logic of Krishna consciousness. And generally what we do is we engage them in what's called a gyata sakriti. We give them prasadam, or we just speak the holy name so that they've heard it. The Srimad Bhagavatam says that if somebody hears the holy name just out of or chants the holy name just out of musical entertainment, or in a joking way, or even in a laughing way, then they'll make advancement. It'll have its effect because of the absolute nature of Krishna and Krishna's energies. So what's important when we distribute these books, it's important that we represent the books, that we're following the philosophy of the books. There's the book Bhagavat, there's the person Bhagavat. And when we represent these books, when we approach people and we're actually the proof of the books, when we approach people, we have to actually imbibe the spirit of what's in the books and represent the books, be the living proof that what's in these books works. So that means we have to exhibit these qualities of Satchitananda, that we're fearless, we are full of knowledge, and that we're happy. When people see that in the Sankirtan devotee, then they'll become attracted to the book. And so, even if they're not reciprocating, then we should be able to not become discouraged or not become discouraged, because we're going to try and, because they don't see this is the point I was trying to get to now, that what is the purpose of every relationship? The purpose of every relationship is that this is a universal principle, that the most advanced devotee gives mercy to the less advanced devotee. And that applies in every relationship. So if we've approached a person and they're less advanced and they're not reciprocating, then just in order to have the reciprocation, we don't come down to their level, because that's opposing the actual purpose of a relationship. The purpose isn't that the less advanced devotee degrades the more advanced devotee, just for the sake of some sentimental, exchange. The purpose of the relationship is that the most advanced devotee imparts to the less advanced devotee and then raises them to the higher platform. That's called that's actually pursuing your self-interest. Conditioned souls are also pursuing their self-interest, but they have these misconceptions that I mentioned earlier, and that begins from even coming down to the material world in the first place. They have these misconceptions, so when they pursue their self-interest, it's this principle that in the Chaitanya Charitamrita it says, Agya Jiva Nija Hite Ahite Kariman. Hite means benefit. They don't understand their benefit. They actually consider something that's for their benefit to be something that's for their loss. And something that's actually going to be for their loss, they think that's for my benefit. I remember once I was doing Sankirtan in a place called Deptford. If anyone knows, that's in South London, and it's Deptford by name and Deptford by nature. It's a really very daunting place to try and do Sankirtan in. And there was me trying to distribute books. I was finding very little interest. And then I noticed that Shri Shri Radha Gokulananda Ki Jai, Sitram Lakshman Ki Jai. I noticed that there was this butcher shop selling all sorts of abominable things, and they must have been having a sale, and there was a queue of people going around the block queuing up to buy meat at the butcher shop. So, eating meat is certainly not, if someone's enlightened, eating meat is not in their self-interest. But these people, they considered, why are they there? Because in their totally distorted and they in their consciousness they're thinking that I'm getting a good deal. It's in my interest. So there's enlightened self-interest and there's unenlightened self-interest. And conditioned souls generally have unenlightened self-interest because of their misconceptions. Especially the main misconception of that they're the body and not that they're not the soul. A devotee has that conception that they are the soul. And they have the conception that everyone else is the soul as well. And that's why when we approach people, it's talking about this in the verse, that when we approach people, we approach them understanding that they're the soul. And that in a sense we're all family. And so we can understand how within the context of a family, that whether somebody reciprocates or not, then the family looks after each other and the family takes care of each other. A parent might have a child that is just is very selfish and very uncultured, but the parent will still look after that child. Especially like we know that the mother, it's like causelessly looking after the child. The love is transcendental. And even when the child, we know stories how, a child may grow up to be a murderer and the mother will always defend her child and say, well, he didn't really mean it and he's really good-hearted at the end of the day. And so if we can see the soul in the heart of all living entities, then it cuts through that perception that they're the body, they're gross, they don't know, they're uncivilized, they don't know how to reciprocate, they're in ignorance. We sort of penetrate that external level of where, it's tit for tat. If you're not nice to me, I won't be nice to you. Because when you're distributing books, you're going to have to accept that people are not going to be nice to you all the time. And we have to work out how to be vimanyava, how to actually give Krishna consciousness to people who are not even nice to us. And that's the challenge. Yesterday it was in Hemel Hempstead. I approached this guy and he said to me, "Forget it, mate, I'm not interested in religion." And I said to him, "Look, it's not, what did I say? I said to him, I'm not religious, I'm a human being." I said, "Look, mate, I'm not religious." I said, "It's not religious or I'm not religious. I'm a human being." And then it sort of stopped him. And he said, "Well, you believe in God, don't you?" I said, "Well, it depends on what you mean by God." And so it's slowed him down. I mean, we're starting to have an exchange. He's starting up very hostile. I don't believe in religion. And he was snarling, he was angry, and he was like, get out of town almost. But then I said to him, it depends what you mean by God. And he said, "Well, God, he had this thing about cancer. And he said, well, God created every human being with cancer cells in them. So what sort of God would do that? Cancer cells are in everyone. Cancer cells are in you as well, mate. And it's just dormant in you." And sometimes the cancer cells get activated and somebody dies of cancer. Why would God do that? And he was really kind of upset. And I said to him, "Do you accept the possibility that God might have a good reason for everything that's going on in the world, including having dormant cancer cells in every person? Do you accept the possibility that God may have a good reason?" And he said, "No." I said, "Well, you're not philosophical. You're not even philosophical. You're just emotional. You got to think, you got to sort of deal with your emotional thing, because that's covering your intelligence. You can't even be intelligent and discuss things philosophically." And then, that's like, there's something going on now. This is a hostile person, and I'm trying to give him Krishna consciousness. And so then, we sort of started chatting and discussing. I can't quite remember exactly what happened after that, but he ended up taking Chant and Be Happy, and he gave £1.20 or something like that for Chant and Be Happy. But I admired him for actually... once we started discussing, I said, "Yeah, you are philosophical, you are thoughtful, you are able to sort of intelligently address issues. That's really nice. Have you ever thought about being a vegetarian?" And he said, no. And then I said, "Well, this is a book that explains some of the reasons why it's good to be vegetarian. And a lot of people are becoming vegetarian these days. They're kind of moving that direction, not just for health reasons, but there's other reasons." He goes, "Yeah, I've got a relative who's a vegetarian." I said, "So... because you're open-minded, I'm going to throw this one in as well and just see how you get on with it." And then he gave me a very warm handshake at the end and went off with the books. So it's because, of being able to see them as the soul rather than just, it's material energy meets material energy and there's, either friction or harmony. If you see a person as once Sri Dhananda Maharaj said, if you see a person as a body, then you like some bodies and you don't like other bodies. So we're meant to be... There's one verse in the Bhagavatam, it says, "Sarva bhuta samadvena naivarena prasangataha," that it's the same principle, that you're supposed to look upon all living entities equally. And it says that when you're distributing Krishna consciousness, we should not have enmity towards any living entity, and we should not be too intimate with any living entity either in the imparting of Krishna consciousness. It's very important because we're not getting. If we become too sort of intimate or enamored of a person, or if we become too much enmity towards a person, then it means that there's a kind of an osmosis going on. There's an osmosis going on where we're actually losing our frame of reference of who we are. We're mixing too much on both levels with the person, and starting to lose our identity as a devotee by becoming too intimate or too averse. By becoming too intimate or too averse, we're coming to their level and losing our perspective of Krishna consciousness. So there has to be a certain detachment. There has to be a certain detachment in distributing Krishna consciousness. And we have to understand that Krishna he wants to see everybody advance and evolve in their Krishna consciousness. What I see is, when I go out on Sankirtan, I see it as an exercise in self-development, essentially. That Krishna's provided a safe playground for me to learn about who I am and develop skills, certain skills of compassion and of understanding the philosophy. And when I go on Sankirtan, I get a chance to practice these skills and develop these skills. And it's a safe playground. Now, sometimes we don't have enough faith in Krishna, and we think, it's like Krishna's going to let something horrible happen to us, or some person is going to blow me out and be rude and be nasty. And sometimes there are people, like I said, who are hostile, who are rude, who are nasty. But that means that's all the more reason why we have to become fixed in the philosophy. And when we are, then we realize that we're actually, we're just performing our duty. And as long as we perform our duty without attachment to the result, we're invulnerable. We're actually invulnerable to whatever nastiness or hostility, or negativity may come towards us, because we're doing our duty. And if something, amazing happens to us, we just offer the fruits to Krishna. And if something like not so nice happens to us, a person doesn't treat us so nice, we don't take it personally, because Krishna's picking up the bill for that one as well. He picks up the bill for that one as well. We're just out there to do our duty. Pick up the bill, it means like if the cost is positive or if the cost is negative. If we're doing service for Krishna and somebody gives us £100 for our service, then we just put that in Krishna's bank account. It's not our £100. It doesn't belong to us. And if we're doing service for Krishna and it costs £100, then Krishna will pay that £100. It'll come out of Krishna's account. It'll either go in, whatever happens to us goes into Krishna's account or comes out of Krishna's account, because we're just simply serving Krishna. We're just in Krishna's employ. So that's when we're doing our duty without attachment to the result. If we are attached to the result, then when we get the £100, we get all elated. And when it costs us £100, we get all miserable. But we shouldn't. We should just simply remain equipoised and very blissful in Krishna's employ. So that's some of the points I've wanted to make today. Actually, Vishwambara's class inspired me very much last time when he was saying that God loves those who even hate him. So that's the principle of causeless mercy, and that's what devotees have to also learn how to do. And that's what this verse is saying, that it says, one must distribute Krishna consciousness to persons who are hostile without becoming angry at them. That's Lord Rishabhdev, an incarnation of Krishna. We can say that is Krishna speaking. And that's the example that Srila Prabhupada gave of someone who simply was going to do his duty, no attachment to the result. And because Krishna could see that this person is not going to become influenced by the result, whether the result is negative or positive. He's not going to be influenced. He's just going to continue doing his duty. Therefore, Krishna could give Prabhupada the most magnificent and spectacular results. So, God loves those who even hate him, and devotees are merciful to even those who are hostile to them. So, are there any comments or questions?